Hello, my name is Jasdeep Singh, and today I'll be talking about speciation. So, what is speciation? Speciation is pretty much the formation of new species over time as they evolve. So, what is a species? A species can be defined as a group of organisms or individuals that are able to interbreed and exchange genetic information to produce viable, fertile offspring. So, they have to make sure that the offspring is fertile. So, speciation can be either slow, gradual, or rapid, just like different paces of it. So when it's more gradual, takes slower, more gradual, it's called phyletic gradualism. So pretty much slow, takes a long time. Another part is called that happens in short bursts. So short bursts are more punctuated equilibrium. So this means that happens very quickly and it's just in bursts. So another aspect of speciation is adaptive radiation. So what is adaptive radiation? So adaptive radiation is the rapid evolution of how organisms or individuals when new habitats open. So when they first are created. So at times of ecological stress, when extinction rates can be rapid, they're followed by adaptive radiation. So the main key about speciation and most types of speciation is reproductive isolation. So this means that the organisms they can't reproduce. Their DNA changes so much over time, in the isolated period, that they can no longer reproduce and or produce fertile offspring. So this is where it really creates the different branches of species to actually come. So speciation results in diversity of life forms. So this increases biodiversity of the overall habitat environment, which is good for the environment, increases resilience. So if there was like a plague or something to come around that could kill off a lot of life, there's a higher chance that some species out there has like the antibodies or something to the plague cure or anything, or has like the resilience to that, so it makes it more strong, increases the fitness of the overall environment too. So there are different types of speciation. So overall, mainly there are 4 different types of speciation. So the first type of speciation is allopatric speciation. So pretty much what this means is that allo, so it's like other, and patric meaning like together, so it's away from each other. So it's like a geological barrier that physically separates the species. So, for example, so there could be like a lake in between species that separates them, or something like a border, or the oceans, or anything that mountain ranges, anything that really separates the species, so they really can't get to each other. It would be like a geological barrier. So, from geological barrier, they'd be isolated from each other. So they can't mate with each other, so they're reproductively isolated and get new species. Another type of speciation is sympatric speciation. Sympatric speciation is a little bit different than allopatric. So allopatric, you have the barrier. However, in sympatric, there's not really a barrier, just genetic polymorphism. So they would be in the same environment. There is no barrier. However, example of sympatric speciation is polyploidy. So this is a mistake in the number of chromosomes that the organism has. So this is very prevalent in plants mainly, not in that as common in animals. So for example, let's say a diploid organism turn into a tetraploid organism, so like 2 to 4, and then they would not be able to mate with each other. So this would be within the population, and then you'd get 2 species. So then we have the peripatric and parapatric speciation. So there's like gradients or branches off of it. So here a new niche is entered. So a niche is like a new like environment, habitat. And in peripatric, you have isolated niche. And in parapatric, it is adjacent. So to sum up, in allopatric and parapatric, you mainly have the prezygotic changes, so habitat isolation, temporal isolation, behavioral, mechanical, and then parapatric and sympatric, you mainly have the postzygotic changes in the actual like gametes and infertile reproduction. Okay, so this is kind of like an example of how speciation occurs. So initially, you start out with the initial sample of the fruit flies. So from there, you'd branch into this. So these are the 2 different like environments there. So there's almost like a geological barrier. One's in one environment, one's in another environment. They're isolated from each other. So one's getting starch and one's getting maltose. So you could think of it as a geological barrier, but not necessarily. So after exposure of several generations to the maltose or the starch respectively for the fruit flies, they wouldn't be mating with each other. They'd be isolated, so over time they'd only be eating the starch or the maltose, so they'd be getting used to that. And slowly the DNA sequences would change. So once they're out of it, after several generations have passed, then they'd come out and they'd only mate with pretty much each other. Same with the maltose. So then these are pretty much new species. So speciation has occurred. So they won't be mating with each other. They cannot produce fertile offspring if they were to now mate with one another. They'd have to mate with each other to produce the fertile offspring. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.